As safe as air travel is, we all know that every now and then there's a terrible tragedy. But what we shouldn't have to worry about is a passenger plane disappearing without a trace. This week Inmarsat, the company that helped track Malaysian Flight 370, announced it will do its part to prevent another such disaster. Joining me to talk about that and all the changes under consideration are pilot Shem Malmquist, industry analyst Mike McCarran, and aviation lawyer Gerald Sterns. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Mike, this week Inmarsat said that they would track planes for free. Is this an industry game changer?
It could be. It's a change in the process. Right now, it's self-reporting when aircraft are on oceanic routes. What this will do is give the aircraft, the controllers, the airlines, more real-time information as the plane goes on oceanic routes, something they don't have right now.
I'd just like to add that currently on the international aircraft, we are using the system as part of the next gen program from the FAA that will track the aircraft. It's just that all the airlines have purchased that product. Some of them have, Air France after their accident and a couple of the others, but in general they're not mostly using that. But it is not installed on the domestic fleets. It's really just an oceanic type of tool.
Shem, let me go to you. In the absence of evidence of what happened to the Malaysia Flight 370, there's a lot of attention that's being paid to the pilots, and a lot of maybe potentially the pilot diverted the plane off of its course. How do you feel about that attention being focused on the pilots?
Well, I think it's natural to look at the person at the front end who has the most control as a person who is responsible for an accident. However, it generally is not placed. It's not looking at what the pilot knew at the time and things of that nature. In the case of Malaysia, there is no evidence at this time to support that the pilots did anything at all. It looks like we just lost them. And one of the other factors with Malaysia is it appears that they lost all electrical power. So even if they had had a tracking device, it would not have been powered. So we see some odd things. The aircraft went up, it appears, to a very high altitude, and other things that would indicate incapacitation or something. We really don't have any way of knowing.
It's important in any type of investigation on an accident, they look at a chain of events and what caused all these little things to line up to cause an accident. And so I think that's why they start into the pilots. They're the last ones in control of the aircraft. But it's just one of many facets of the entire investigation, because you want to see how everything's strung together from takeoff till last contact with that aircraft.
Although just from an accident investigation aspect, which I have a lot of experience in, we tend to look at things as always causal, where it's possible that one event doesn't necessarily lead to another. It's actually our human way of trying to conceptualize things that may not reflect reality.
Well, from our point of view, if I can butt in on the question of what happened in the cockpit and who did what, there's some controversy, you know, about cameras in cockpits and that sort of thing. And from our perspective, representing the families, we have seen the pilots being generally very resistive to that real-time stuff. On the other hand, we would kind of like to know what's going on up there rather than getting a redacted transcript of what somebody thinks we should see.
Shem, how do you feel about cameras in the cockpit?
Well, from the pilot perspective, people are resistant due to the history of voice recordings being played over the news media and things of that nature, and obviously having your family see your face as something is happening is not something that anybody wants to have happen. But
what if the cameras were not on the pilot's face, but just could tell us and show us what happened or did not happen during a crisis?
I think that from an accident investigation perspective, that could be very beneficial. There is possible for a pilot, for example, to try to push a switch and the switch doesn't take, for example, it has an internal fault. Nothing in the system will record that the pilot attempted to do that if they didn't push hard enough, for example. And there's really no way around that without having some type of recording. We don't necessarily have to have it on their face, and that could reduce some of the pushback.
All of us have our own theories on what happened to this Malaysian plane. Mike, what's yours?
Well, my theories right now, I don't have one because I don't have enough information to make a valid judgment. There's a lot of questions as far as why the transponder was lost contact with the transponder, why the aircraft wasn't tracked on primary radar by Malaysian authorities and others, and just loss of communications overall. So until some of those questions get answered, there's just not a really good way to get a good idea of what actually happened.
Jerry, you must have a theory.
I don't know about a theory, no theories. I think one thing I would rule out probably is pure terrorism, because terrorists steal airplanes to make statements. They run them into buildings. They do other horrible things. They had all kinds of buildings they could have run into, or they could have dumped the thing in the China Sea and killed all the people right there. They didn't.
Right.
What happened to it? Why did they go up to 45,000 feet, which is up where you don't breathe anymore? There's some very tough questions still out there.
Jim, 10 seconds or less.
I would be concerned and looking really hard at aircraft fire. I think it's one of the most scary things out there. And if you have a fire, it could cause loss of electrical equipment and all sorts of other secondary problems.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. And, we'll be following this story for years to come, probably.
Maybe.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.